Uh-huh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to PCP, No Boosters Needed. It is a pleasure to be here with you. I am Jukadre, and joining me tonight is Shazbot. Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Hey, Shazbot. So, first and foremost, October was a great set of games, and I want to say that I missed them, and I'm sorry.
And we missed you. And honestly, they were some of the most fun games to shoutcast. I got to play in some of them, so that was a lot of fun as well. A brilliant tournament. Yeah, it was great to be in there.
Awesome. And we also, it just walked in the door. Hello, Zeno and the Snurks. Welcome.
Hello. Sorry, was the recording today?
Yes.
Odd.
We're recording right now.
Oh,
In
snap.
fact, we
I'm
are
sorry.
live. So nice intro.
Oh, no.
We can re-record it. That's fine.
Nah, let's just keep going.
All right.
We like the raw. And, I was talking to Zeno and Comet Crash. I hosted a podcast for a while, and one of my favorite things about it was we didn't edit really anything. I added sound effects in, but everything else about it was exactly how it happened. And I felt an authenticity and a very real sense when I listened back on it. And yes, I listened to my old podcast. I'm vain. It's okay.
That's how you learn.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that because like every single time I say something like cool or witty or strangely poignant, you seem to cut it out because I don't hear that in the podcast when I listen to it.
All right. So Zeno, welcome. We were just talking about how great October was and the fact that there were some of the most fun games that the PLC has seen. Shazbot got to play and cast in them. It was a lot of fun. But you were with me for the same reason that I missed it. You missed it.
Yes, correct.
All right. Well, we won't go into that because that's not what we're here to talk about. But what we are here to talk about is how everything went in our finals. And you know what? Let's talk about, before we get to the finals, I love the fact that we got a game 3.5. And
yeah.
When I was looking through the playlist, I was like, what? 3.5? What does that even mean? And it was because our Swiss game 3 ended so quickly. We got to jump into a fourth game and watch the slugfest of Team Unknown versus Slick to see who secured their spot in the finals. And oh my gosh, the last 10 minutes of that game were so much fun.
It was absolutely brilliant. It was fun to watch, but we're going to go live and cast the last little bit of the game. And I had just finished plugging in my microphone and I was like, huh? Or what? So you could kind of see the bewilderment on my face as I was trying to, I guess you can't see it on my face, but in my voice, as I was trying to figure out not only what was going on, but also warm up for shoutcasting. So good stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So the end of that one, now we can get into our finals. They were between Team Unknown and the Fall Guys. And one of the first points I want to make is Team Unknown is still the Chaos team, and I love them for it. The base race at the end of game 3.5 really showcases when Team Unknown decides to do something, they all do it. It doesn't matter what else is going on the map. They commit to the play, and it's highly entertaining to watch.
Right? Yeah. I always think of their bot lanes when it comes to their coordination, their 3-4 man ganks that are just like script work. But Team Unknown is like a hive mind, man. It's hilarious to see them all move at once, and sometimes they're a detriment. But yeah, I love watching Team Unknown.
So part of their chaos is they pick probably the most unique champions amongst our teams. And that was manifest in game number 1 where Death played Kai'Sa mid. And I understand that Kai'Sa has been flexible in the past, but it has been for a while that she's a bot lane exclusive. And it was refreshing to see him play that champion in that way. And I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. So my own team, which is the Krug Killers, which hopefully should be coming back for November, was when playing against them, Death is this like machine of like he knows the exact amount of damage that he can do to you. You see him play a lot of Syndra for that reason.
Mhm.
But what's really interesting is like sitting in the champ select, trying to figure out what to ban against them. It was like, well, we could ban Taric, and it's like, no, Kiroro, is that who's their
Yeah.
support again?
Yeah,
Kiroro, I got
Kiroro.
it in one. Kiroro plays like 20 champions. Like we can't pinch them. And I was like, okay, well, what if we targeted mid? And it's like, oh, I'm kind of comfortable mid. Trying to figure out what we could do against that team is so tough. And they're very, very powerful for that.
So, Zeno, one of your expertise is interactions between the champions and why something is or isn't strong. What benefit do you see in playing so many champions as opposed to mastering 4 or 5?
All right, so it's definitely a give and take type situation. The benefit of learning multiple champions is you can always keep your enemies on their toes and react to what they're building, choosing someone that'll heavily counter a strategy that works well for them. On the other hand, it doesn't give you the chance to really fine tune mechanics and learn every single little detail about that champion.
Mhm.
As someone that like sticks more along the lines of playing the champions I like to play, sticking with them, I definitely see the benefits of that and, being able really master those champions and know how to utilize them to the best of my ability. It helps me with harder matchups, but if someone really, really knows the game and takes the chance to really learn those champions, then it can be a bloodbath.
You
Very
know,
good.
it's very interesting you say that. I've been listening to LS speak on the topic lately, and he was pointing out how even at the top level, we're getting to so many champions that can do so many different roles that you can't understand all the nuances, at least for the more complicated champions, that like a pro player might have like 5 to 7 champions under their belt, but that is like a much smaller number than you would think a pro player would be able to handle. Now, I'm sure
Mhm.
there are people out there that can play a lot of champions average, but you don't need to bring your average to a tournament. You need to bring a winning strategy, or at least a not losing strategy, and then have a winning strategy somewhere else. And it's funny, as we talk about Team Unknown, I don't feel that from them, or at least they hide it very well.
Mhm.
That they're able to play to each other's strengths. So, as you're saying, it's interesting to me that in pro play they're focusing on a smaller champion pool, and then here in PLC, we seem to have a fairly large pool in teams.
Now, when you bring that up, I actually think that's a good opportunity to transition into the Fall Guys because their champion pool is a little bit smaller.
Hmm.
Uh, what's it? Shadow? No, who's their top laner? I know it starts with an S. Give me a second here. Phantom, East Phantom.
East Phantom, that's it.
Yeah, Phantom is a great Darius player.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back and watch their games, that's what he picks the most, and it's insane. And then Elijah is very good on the Draven. They picked that one a lot, and I think it was Vex in the mid lane. They did get a new jungler this past round, so I don't want to comment on that one necessarily. But their champion pool is a lot more consistent, and it's not limited. I wouldn't dare to say, but it's like we've been talking about. They've been able to focus in on these picks and do a little bit more with them.
Yeah, it's very interesting you say that, because the interview that we had with him at the very end, I was very curious to know. The question I had asked East Phantom was, how do you determine what champions you're going to play? Is it like everyone? And East Phantom kind of like laughs and says, we've been playing together for so long. I know everyone's abilities fairly well. I just do the draft. It is East Phantom that is calling the shots, from the island of top lane for the rest of his team, which I thought was wild.
Yeah.
I don't think we see that very often.
No, I don't think so either. But what we do see often is not only do they have their picks and the way that East Phantom kind of runs everything, the Fall Guys never let a bad start get to their mental.
Mm.
I have noticed this about this team even before they took their little hiatus. They never let the early game affect their outcome, because game number 1 of our finals was atrocious in the early game, and not because they
Mm.
didn't play well, but Team Unknown really got the upper hand, and they were taking scrapes and dives and all these fights, and they were ahead for the first 15 to 20 minutes. And then the Fall Guys, they're just like, oh, by the way, while you've been picking fights and stuff, we've been farming and taking turrets, so we're even, and now we win. And it's so impressive every time I watch them play.
Absolutely. Thinking back on Krug Killers versus the Fall Guys, which was actually streamed. We had a kind of a mess of an invade, very very silly time, but ended up coming out with a double kill for us
That's
in
right.
favor of the Krug Killers, and we were 0-2 against the team that was 2-0, and we're like, oh my goodness, is this happening? Spoilers, it did not happen. But it's one of those things that even though they had like such a bad start, that they were able to buckle down and keep to their basics and not lose to an 0-2 team.
So I actually did get to watch that entire game. I
Mhm.
I took a break. So we were at a music festival. All right, I said it. And in between bands that I didn't necessarily want to see, I jumped in the merch line. I was like, "Ooh, hey, PLC's on." So I hopped in there and I watched that invade live, and it was so exciting. And then, like you said, it didn't end up working out for you guys, but it was
Yeah.
amazing to see the Krug Killers play, and then to watch as the Fall Guys just patiently played out the lanes and ended up taking the win. I think it's one of their biggest strengths is the
Mhm.
fact that they are just rock solid in the mental.
Right. Absolutely.
Going back to Team Unknown and game number one, everything was going on bottom lane. It's all Calavir all day, just setting up plays to get that Ezreal ahead, and it's it's so it's another really fun thing to see where our teams put their focus, because Team Unknown is usually ganking on the bottom side, and you've talked about the ability for Bear to just kind of be there, and later on in the team fights just set up like an Ornn ultimate, or a nice setup with the Vola Bear, or his favorite on the Malphite, just setting up a play from behind and getting his team moving ahead while they've been focusing on the bottom side, and it's beautiful to watch.
Hmm. Yeah, there's such a team. We mentioned it once. We'll mention it 100 times. If there's anything to learn from Team Unknown, it's their team centric play. It's funny you say that. I've got a little bit more bias than I normally do, and I know I'm a very biased caster.
Hmm.
That I'm like, wait, maybe I could use that. Maybe if I'm expecting gank spot side, that I can. I'm a competitor now. I'm not just a
Hmm.
caster.
So I like that. I like that you're learning, and I hope that you do take that to the Krug Killers, and we see more than just the Krugs going down.
Hopefully, we can kill more than Krugs.
Yeah. Uh, I'll give one more really positive thing about the Fall Guys is I noticed that even their drafts are just really calm. They do pick exciting champions sometimes, but they understand the purpose of the draft. They actually do what you, Shazbot, have been requesting. If
Hmm.
we look at the game two draft, there was a lot of engage, a lot of fight and scrap coming out of Team Unknown, and they just made a disengage comp.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
had Xin Zhao, and I want to say Braum, and something else that just says, no, we don't want to fight right now. And that's how they did it. They knew that they could pick those champions, stop the threat, and then be able to turn it around in the end.
Yeah. And took control of the game in a very brutal manner. It's a testament to East Phantom's ability to draft, since as we said before, it's him. It's
Hmm.
he knows his team very very well and is able to call shots. And they still mess around. They're still a good group of guys. And but yeah, very fun to play with.
Yeah, I think having those champions that can disengage and discourage fights can also make a huge difference when it comes, playing in matches and stuff. Because a lot of times, like that's a big weakness I think a lot of league players have is the desire to want to go in and fight. When a lot
Mm,
of times it's more about playing defensive.
yeah.
Mm, right.
Alrighty. Any other comments about our finals, everybody here? Any other, really cool moments or points we want to bring up? The unfortunate truth is we talk about these two teams a lot because they're in the finals a lot, which isn't a bad thing, right? we like these guys. We like everyone who comes and plays, and it is what it is. But
I,
it does kind of limit what we can repeat literally every month.
Well, I am just very excited about future tournaments. Whenever we have like a good turnout for a tournament like this, it just makes it easier for me to share with friends and say, "Get your butts in here,"
Mm.
because this could be you. Check this out. Look at this. This was me. This is me dying, guys. Look at this. Uh, so, man, there was one moment in game 2 which was not streamed that I had the coolest echo play I think I've ever done ever. I recorded it, I clipped it, and I died to death anyways. And it was so funny that Death after the game messaged me and was like, "That was really clean.
Mm.
Next time." And I was like, "Oh, well, at least he said it was cool."
Did you post it in the Clips and Show Off channel?
I did not, but I think I still have the replay, and I just learned how to pull up old replays, so
Nice.
maybe I'll post that.
Oh no, it doesn't work after the patch.
It doesn't work after the patch.
No,
No.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll still
that
find it. I'm
okay.
I'm sure I have it somewhere.
All right, please. And for everyone in our Discord server, there is a channel called Clips and Show Off. So come join us and put your own show off clips. Watch Shazbot do a really cool echo thing. I wish I could comment on it more, but he hasn't posted it yet.
Come to It'll come. It'll
It'll
come.
come. Alrighty, then, guys, let's run through our next patch because it will be available on our next tournament very quickly. Because I know there were a lot of other things that we need to cover after we do that. So first and foremost, Ambessa has been released, and I want initial feelings about her based on your exposure. Go ahead. Don't always speak at
Man.
Yeah,
once.
yeah, so as a person that loves to play on the PvE, so funny enough, she already got some like early nerfs even before her release, just adjusting her numbers because they found that her number was high.
Mhm.
Yeah, but overall, she I think is going to suffer from the same issue as Cassante, where it's going to be hard to balance her because trying to balance between dashes on top of damage while like keeping her useful without making her overbearing is going to be challenging.
And that's what it looked like based on the reveal gameplay that she was just so strong. What do you think, Shazbot? You and I actually had a lot of fun with this conversation a little earlier tonight.
Yeah, I think that the community's immediate reaction to everything is to freak out about things like, "Oh no, another champion with a unique identity." Like yeah, champions are going to be strong for their own reasons. And playing her, she feels really really good without ever feeling oppressive. We did the 1v1 against each other, and it was like, yeah, that she can do a lot of really strong things. And then we played a couple of games with her against her, and it was like Ambessa was never the problem without ever feeling like she was useless. It'll be interesting to see where she settles in the meta. Of course, Riot could always make a crazy big swing either way, a big nerf or a big buff. Or like she could be completely overpowered in pros and get nerfs accordingly. And I just don't see that happening. I really, really like that the quote unquote 300 years experienced champion actually feels like, no, this champion has like a lot of attention to detail and feels good without feeling bad on the other team. So I don't know.
And Zeno, you brought up the slight nerfs to her numbers. I think that was a good thing because I'm with Shazbot. I think that she feels a lot better than other new release champions. She doesn't feel so overbearing. And one of my favorite things is just the amount of experimentation you can give to a champion like this. I went Grasp of the Undying in our little 1v1. What we did is I set up a 5v5 with 4 bots on each side, and Shazbot and I 1v1'd in the mid lane, both as Ambessa. And he went Conqueror with Barrier. I went Grasp of the Undying with Ignite, and we were just kind of goofing around with different combos and item paths and everything like that. And, she's just so flexible with the way her kit works. I thought it would be really, really cool. Her E has a 99% slow if you build a Stride Breaker on top of that. So you slow them for 99%, beat the crap out of them, and as they're just about to get away, you Stride Breaker, and then you get your cooldowns back up. I think that's, especially with all her dashes, makes her super sticky.
Bully Ambessa right there.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
And go ahead.
Yeah, she doesn't have like crazy overbearing CC. Like honestly, if this was to happen in reverse, where Mbessa was released in season 1, season 2, and Riven was released just now, you'd be like, oh my goodness, Mbessa, but she's got a stun.
Yeah.
That's overpowered. You know, it's like everyone's kind of got their own strengths or whatever. But anyways, I think she's fine. I think she's a lot of fun to play and has the potential to do some big stuff without feeling like Cassante on release or,
Yeah,
you know.
and one of the things I've been thinking about saying when we were recording this is I like that her ultimate is so skinny. That skill shot is far and it's really strong, but dude, it's hard to land that thing.
Yeah. It's similar to Warwick ult, where it's like it's powerful, it's impactful, but missing it feels really, really bad, and it
Yeah.
is easier to do than you would think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any other? Go ahead, Zeno.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, they had to fine tune her numbers mainly because they found that her assassin build was strong and like she was just bursting.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
could see that.
I could absolutely see that. Like she should be able to kill ADCs because you can't run away from her, but killing ADCs because she can kill you in half a second or you can't respond, okay, that would feel really bad.
Yeah.
I hope she kind of stays in this middle ground.
And
Yeah,
one of the reasons I think that works is because all of her abilities are on bonus AD. Like that's really important. If she were all on base AD, I think she'd be overtuned. So good job, Riot, for recognizing that and making her mobility more of the identity and her scaling and buying of items what makes her strong. I like that.
100%.
Any
yeah,
other
definitely-
thoughts? Go
Yeah, I
ahead,
was
Zeno.
just gonna say definitely regarding item building. Like if you can make it so that they kind of have to choose an approach to take, I feel like that works best. Like that's what they balanced set around back in the day. I feel like that was very beneficial for them, where you gotta choose either tank or assassin. You can't really do both.
Yeah. And then there's Cassante. Okay, let's be real. Will that ever not be funny to talk about?
The 300 years
Cassante.
comment or the
No,
Cassante's-
the fact that Cassante is still a champion, like it blows my mind. He is too strong. But I don't want to start a rant on that. We have stuff we have to get to. In my eyes, it will never not be funny to say, and then there's Cassante, right?
right?
Just any conversation about balance or power or anything like that, it just goes instantly in the trash when Cassante comes into the conversation.
And I want to highlight one thing with Cassante real fast, and that is that he just feels bad to play against. Like it feels like ramming your head against a big brick wall. With Mbessa, it feels less so. Like she does have some omnivamp, she has a big shield, but it feels like you can interact with the champion much more than with other, you know, quote unquote on release champions. That it's like what is even going on with this champion to be able to play against them. So very well designed. You know, kudos to Riot.
Agreed. Alrighty. So I am so sorry to everyone who wants to hear a lot of stuff, but again, we try and focus on what is relevant to the PLC in our discussions. So we're gonna drop to Swain. Like we're gonna skip all the other champions and drop to Swain.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm doing that is because I think that some of these changes might actually bring him more into favor. We haven't seen a lot of Swain in the PLC, but I tried him for the first time since his rework, which is a really silly thing to say because I've been playing the game for however long and I've never played Swain. That's just silly. But I think he felt pretty strong, especially with this was post changes with the way that the E comes and grabs a little bit quicker. I guess this is a second round, actually, now that I'm looking at it. Anyway, yeah, felt really good. I think that Swain might become more popular, especially in our tournament.
Yeah, the improvements to Swain's numbers, I think, be beneficial, especially since, like, nowadays you see a lot of Swain in the bot lane, in my experience. Not so much, like, top and mid like he was way back in the day. So I think it'll be interesting to see those base numbers benefit him, as well as the healing improvements on his ult, because that's kind of become Swain's identity.
Yeah.
You mean a return to his identity was his ult?
That's true. Old Swain was just this insane drain tank. Remember. Oh my gosh, I remember. It was so frustrating.
Yeah, here at PCP, we like to unlock childhood memories of those who are listening. But seriously, though, I really, really like the new Swain. The pull is feels really good, but I really like how short the duration of his ult feels now that you can trigger it a couple of times. It's got some skill expression to it that is shockingly interesting in my eyes. As someone who does not play him very often, but plays with him very often, yeah, very cool change.
All right. On to our next champion. Varus got some on-hit damage changes on his W, and we're already a Varus house. Let's be real. Most of our marksmen play Varus, so I just wanted to bring it up as a popular champion, not necessarily that this is gonna make or break him, especially because it's only 3 extra on-hit damage. But pay attention to the Varus. I think he will remain, if not rise in priority, if just a little bit. All right, easy. Sounds like everyone agrees.
Totally, man. Bring it on. Bring them on.
So
We already know who Calver's picking.
yeah, exactly. So then the next champion, based exclusively on our October tournament, I wanted to talk about Vayne real quick because she's another champion we didn't see a lot, but she was in like 4 out of the 5 games I watched from the YouTube channel. So like, what happened? This was pre-buff Vayne. So what? Like, she has to be rise in priority now.
I don't know. I can't comment on Vayne because it really just feels like there's another marksman that just outclasses her. Strictly because she's short range. And this is someone who was a Vayne apologist for a really long time just because of how strong she was in early seasons. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on here.
Well,
you don't have any comments on why he's so strong?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Vayne is just like at the end of the day, you're not picking Vayne for her, like specifically for her AD damage specifically, but more so for her true damage and her to just shred and reposition quickly. So I feel like the AD buff is a nice little improvement to help her when she does ult, but I don't think it's going to be like a super game changer on.
I appreciate that. And you're right. When I was looking through, I played her a little earlier today on an ARAM, and all of the recommended items were Rage Blade or Terminus or Wits End. They're all attack speed items rather than raw damage. And so I think you're exactly right. You want her for her W and the way she can misposition after 2 seconds without ability haste, 2 seconds on that tumble. So just adding a little bit of quality AD into her ultimate and not just into her base kit, but on the ultimate cast, I think is a nice little addition, a little bit of flavor.
Well, it's because of stuff like that that they had to readjust her like in the past. Like I will never forget when they had to hot fix nerf her on a P because they added an AP scaling to her true damage.
Yep. Big mistake.
That was ridiculous.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was. You would rush Rage Blade, and I think it was Ludens, wasn't it, Xeno?
So the build, because this was back with Mythics, so because of that Rage Blade, they were reintroducing Rage Blade into the game, which is why they were giving ADC's AP ratios. So they were like, okay, let's give an AP ratio to Vayne's true damage, and so you would rush Gins, and then you would build a Nashor's Tooth into Kraken Slayer into Rabadon's.
Wow.
Yeah, so and back then Kraken Slayer had a ridiculous AP ratio on it. It was like 60% AP every third auto attack, and then it would ramp up to like 120%. It was absolutely ridiculous. So that on top of her true damage, she was dealing true damage and mixed damage, and it was ridiculous. So they they transferred the AP ratio to her.
300 years, man.
Yep.
And they thought that was a good idea. Anyway, it just makes me so sad. All right, a little funny. Mr. Shazbot as a Warwick player, I wanted to bring him up because instead of saying W damage decreased, max health increased, or ult cooldown reduced but Q increased, the summary for Warwick's changes is lots.
Yeah.
It's the single word lots.
Yeah, so this might be a mistake for having me on the podcast for all these changes because I could basically talk all night about all these.
Right.
This is so insane that I like cannot believe some of these went through. Particularly how Blood Hunt interacts with people. Basically being able to keep that movement speed. Wait, did they? I know on the PBE they allowed him to stay fast in combat until he auto attacked. Did they keep that? I'm reading the patch notes now. Um,
Let's
Cooldown
see.
reduction.
Yeah, no longer locks out casting while in champion combat.
No, so that's a thing. Uh, Man, now I need to go test this in a game. But basically, it had it so that in the past, if Warwick was running at you from Blood Hunt, all you'd have to do was tag him, with a Sivir Q or Ignite or anything, and he'd be considered in combat and lose all that movement speed. No longer. The
Oh.
change was that he would keep that movement speed until he autoed you, which was important because that didn't count his Q, that didn't count his fear. He kept that movement speed until he specifically autoed you, which was crazy. And like the changes for Warwick, there are some small things in here that seem so small, but his model size increased by 15% is huge as a tank. Or the hit radius on his R,
Mhm.
you hit some gnarly stuff. That they got rid of it's probably not a bug, but the fact that you could hit someone from behind just felt bad.
Mm.
Yeah, Warwick, this is the arcane buff for Warwick. Like they absolutely wanted to make sure that everyone knew that Warwick was coming in season 2. Spoilers if you haven't watched it yet.
Right.
But yeah, crazy stuff.
Yeah, so I know specifically what it is with Warwick's Blood Hunt change is that now he won't be locked out of activating it while he's in combat. So you could activate it mid chase.
Mm.
Which
Okay.
is which is yeah, so they have to keep the in combat stuff because that wouldn't matter if you were in combat.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything you see in here, like, what's the downside, yo? Yeah, he was already really good. So I don't know, man. As a Warwick fan, easily my most played champion. I'm happy. I'll enjoy Arcane and Warwick. Thank you very much.
Nice. All right. Well, are there any other thoughts from the patch that you guys want to bring up before we move on to some other talking points?
That was a big patch.
Yeah. And I wish we could cover more. They just, there are things that we probably won't see in November. Although we have a lot of teams who have already signed up for November. I'm going to throw
Yes.
out a few names here that we haven't seen yet. USU White, UNF Ospreys, Mithril Knights, the League of Losers, Brett and the rest. All these teams have signed up. That's 5 in addition to our usual, 3 or 4 that show up. So come watch and support these guys because who knows? Maybe our entire talk about the patch is completely irrelevant because we got 5 new teams. But I digress. I'm excited for November.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for Krug Killers to get our first win. Who it'll be.
So we mentioned Arcane season 2 is coming out, and when as of recording, that is happening in what's the
Like
timer at
5
now? Like
hours from now?
5 hours or something like that. Yeah, it's coming quick. So
Yeah, 5 hours.
we're excited about that. And now the last thing that we need to talk about is Worlds. And we've only got a few minutes left to talk about Worlds because it's a really important thing that we need to discuss. And I'm going to let you guys start this one off, and I'm just going to be in the background as you bring it up.
Oh man. Okay. I might need to start. I feel like I'm talking too much, but the ending to Worlds was the most jaw on the floor moment, 2-2. Uh, they took a fight that was good but didn't seem that much. They tried to kill Faker, and then of course Faker doesn't die, and they end the
Mhm.
game off that. That was the most like, what? Like, they just went off that? Oh my goodness. It was so hype, so much fun. What a great last game.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the way that just pros can push the advantage is crazy. I remember so Jihadri and I were watching Worlds together over at his place, and it's just interesting to see how they play versus how you usually see in league players. Like I even made the passing joke of these pros aren't even that good. Like they only have like 8 kills 20 minutes on their team. I usually have like 10 kills this far in. But it just really goes to show how they minimize their mistakes, and even the smallest mistake can make a huge difference in a match.
And I was afraid Xeno was going to take my story. Shazbot, that exact moment you were talking about, that play where they tried to kill Faker, but he lives. I was like, all
Mm,
right, guys, listen, we're at game number 5. I have been in the same like 10 feet of my house for
yeah.
all 5 games. So I'm going to go use the bathroom for the only time that I can because I was a fool and decided not to do that in between the games. And by the time I came back, the game was over.
It was like the most like, okay, I think this is like a good safe time to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And he came back
Yeah.
to an
And
exploding Nexus.
yeah. I mean, I took my phone with me, so like I got to watch it all, but like that's not the point. The point is what you brought up. Like it was bananas.
It
That
was
was not when
crazy.
the game was supposed to end. We had another 15 minutes and it was done in 3. And it was just like, what?
Oh man, brilliant back and forth. I'm so glad it wasn't just a shutout,
Mhm.
but brilliant, brilliant game. So much fun to watch. I need to watch it again. Honestly, it's been a bit.
And Zeno, I invited you to come watch, and you said, I'm not really big into pro. And I was like, come on, man. It's Worlds. Come on. So what was the experience like for you having not really followed or sat through a whole best of 5 on the pro level like that before?
Yeah, it was really cool to see, in my opinion. Just being able to see the hype and the gameplay really shown off was very cool. It definitely encourages me to watch more pro play than I did in the past.
Yeah. And I'm with Shazbot. I think the fact that it went all 5 games, and I'm going to say it because someone else out there might be afraid to say it to other people, but follow my example. I'm glad T1 was the victor. Like, what a great story. It's history.
Yeah,
Someone might argue, this is the 5th time. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal because this is the first time the same 5 players have won twice in a row. That's something
right.
people don't
True.
consider is when they won season 5 and they moved into season 6, they got a different top laner and coach. Like it was completely different. And then when they lost in season 7, they had another new top laner. Like they couldn't keep it all together. But this is
Yeah.
the same 5 players who stuck together. And not only that, they were in the finals the year before. The same 5. So think about that. These 5 guys have been to the last 3 Worlds finals and won 2 of them. Like, how is that not an exciting story?
It really is cool, and I do like them. Like Owner and is just hilarious to watch. Watching the opening ceremony and seeing the one guy with the little like thumb across his cheek and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you guys are such dorks. I love this game. Like, uh, it really was a lot of fun though, and I am kind of glad that SKT won. It's something that like I can talk about, with someone who watches a lot of football and
Mm-hmm.
then say, okay, Faker is our Peyton Manning or something like that. And
Right.
they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I don't know enough about football to continue this analogy, but let me tell you about Faker, you know?
So you actually Peyton is the right one because he has taken teams to the Super Bowl and won, I think 5 actually is the answer to that. So that's exciting.
And to that, I will say, I'll take your word for it. Like, that's about as far as I can go. But Faker, I'm really glad that he could be called one of the greats, and I'm glad that we have the greats, especially when they had such a great animation. Oh, like just what a
Mm,
great October for League of Legends,
absolutely.
October, November. So more to come, I hope.
Did did you see the sign that said Faker, I named my goat after you?
No.
Yeah, there was someone with a sign of a picture of their pet goat and they named it Faker because he's the goat.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah,
Gino, I know you were there. You saw it. We talked about
Yeah,
it.
it was great.
honestly, this could just, become a gushing session of, have you seen the video where Faker runs around and scares all of his teammates? It's just like they're just like great, and SKT is not the only team that's like this, especially but anyways, it's great. I love that our sport is not as pretentious. I don't want to badmouth too many sports because they can beat me up, but sometimes I watch other sports and it just kind of feels like sometimes they just show up because they need to and not because like a love of the game or anything like that. But it really does feel like sometimes league players are a lot of fun and really great. So
Agreed.
I think the community could learn a lot from not just their gameplay, but also their emotional state.
Wonderful. Any other thoughts about Worlds before we wrap it up?
No, I think that pretty much does it.
Agreed.
Alrighty. Well, Zeno and the Snurks, Shazbot, thank you so much for joining us. And a big thank you to the background. We've got Comet Crash running this in the back. Thank you to him. He's great. Thank you to our listeners so much for listening to the PCP. You can find us by searching Progenitor Circuit on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch. Sign up to play in the tournaments on start.gg, and we will see you there.